Alright, so we're going to begin part 9 of this chapter 2 lesson, and we're going to talk about personal protection. Alright, so AMTs can be involved in prevention of illnesses and injuries just as much as any other medical professional can. And we need to get more involved in patient education and tell our patients about, and potential patients about, heart disease, cancer, stroke, and chronic respiratory diseases, diabetes, and so on, and talk about things that can help prevent this from happening to them. We can recognize and report abuse, which we are required to in Georgia to report child abuse, so you want to make sure you report it to the proper authorities. You can also potentially be involved in helping refer patients to care and rehabilitation. If you have a patient that you're chronically going out on and needs help with walking and stuff, they may need rehabilitation to help them where they can potentially walk better, or especially around their home, so that they don't trip and fall and fracture a hip and end up causing other potential complications. And one thing that we can do that is very important on any emergency scene is recognize hazardous materials and other exposures. And if we do recognize that a hazardous material is present, we need to get to a safe area and let the proper people address it. So if you're not trying to address it, do not address it. And we'll talk about it in a couple slides a little bit more. So at the very beginning of your shift, at the very beginning of the day, at the very beginning of the call, in the beginning, we have to think about safety. And we have to ensure that we are safe along with the public. And that starts at the very beginning, as right when you're dispatched. When you're dispatched to a call, you should route yourself to the most appropriate route. Sometimes the most appropriate route is not the shortest route. If it's 3 o'clock and the elementary school is getting out, well, then it might be best to go a different route so that you do not go straight through the middle of elementary school traffic and a bunch of kids running around. So make sure you know your area and make sure you know these routes. If there's a very dangerous intersection that you can avoid, you may want to avoid it. Other things you can do is put your seatbelt on. I cannot believe that I've ridden and worked with people who are in this field who do not believe in wearing their seatbelt. That's just totally crazy. As many accidents as we have seen, and as many as we've worked with, where people were seriously injured and did not have their seatbelt on, and in the same vehicle, someone could be in that same vehicle with their seatbelt on and escape with little to no injury. So make sure you protect yourself in the ambulance, and that even goes for after you pick up the patient and you have the patient in the back. You should wear your seatbelt. You should wear your seatbelt while you're driving, and in the back, when you can, you should wear your seatbelt. If you are engaged in a procedure that requires you to become unbuckled, then you may have to. But any other time, you should have your seatbelt on and keep your seatbelt on. When you're on the scene, you should wear your safety vest. If you can see there in the picture, it's at night. You can see how that fireman, his reflective lettering is on all of them, are kind of warning drivers that there is someone there. Well, our uniforms as EMTs typically do not have that. So what do you need to do? You need to wear your protective vest. And now it is actually required by law that you wear a protective vest while working on the roadside. So you want to make sure that you continue to protect yourself. Whenever you are arriving on scene, make sure you keep a path clear so that you can escape the scene in case something bad happens. Make sure you scan the scene and you look for hazards, and make sure you use situational awareness and you're continuously scanning your scene, looking for potential hazards. Now, the initial assessment and the scene size up is continuous. You're always reevaluating. So just because you've already checked the scene once to see if it's safe does not mean that you go back and revisit that to check and see if it is safe. Make sure all the time you are always aware of your surroundings. And if things change and become unsafe, well, then you need to remove yourself from that situation or do something to make it safer. Now, hazardous materials, you want to try to identify the hazardous material from as far away as you can. Use binoculars, stay uphill and upwind from it, and use your ERG, your emergency response guide, to help you identify it, and follow the directions in the ERG. Now, if you are not trained in hazardous materials, then you do not need to try to stop the leakage, try to rescue people or anything, or even try to decon them until the properly trained people are there to tell us what to do and let them handle it, okay? Because you can become injured and permanently scarred for life due to being exposed to some hazardous materials. Vehicle collisions, not only is the collision itself make it the scene unsafe, it's just the location that makes it unsafe. You're on the roadway, you have impatient drivers, people may not be paying attention to you, they're looking at the scene, trying to see what they can see. You may get hit by a vehicle. You need to make sure you try to make that scene as safe as possible. Have as many resources there as possible to help you control it. You may need police there or law enforcement there to direct traffic, to make a buffer zone so that you are safe while you're treating and caring for patients. The other things that make these scenes unsafe is that now you have glass, you have jagged metal, where you can end up getting injured, and you also have fluids that are leaking, that could potentially be leaking from this vehicle, which one could ignite and catch on fire, or two could have something that maybe you're allergic to, or three, it just makes the ground slippery, which could cause you to fall. So you want to make sure that you are aware of that and make sure that you utilize proper protection, like you could use some kitty litter or something, throw down on the ground to make it where you're not so slippery, or just avoid the spills themselves. You want to park your unit appropriately, which could be in a way so that if a driver was to come in and wasn't paying attention, that they'd hit the ambulance before they hit you. But you want to park the vehicle so that you can get to your equipment, so that you can form a safe zone and you have access to all your equipment safely. And just like on any call, you want to use full protective gear. You want to use PPE. Now, if your service provides extrication gear, you should wear it. You never know when things could go wrong or where you could get injured. So using your extrication gear helps a lot. Make sure you wear the proper gloves, and if you need eye protection, make sure you use eye protection. Electricity. Now, down power lines, that's something that we do not mess with, and you want to make sure that if there are down power lines, that you contact the power company. And those lines are hot. They are energized until the power company says they're not. Not the fire chief, not your supervisor, not some random guy that just showed up. You only can assume that they are not energized when the power company tells you they are not. The electrical grids in our areas, in our hometowns and stuff, everywhere, is very complicated, and that electricity is not forgiving once it gets you. Also, lightning can be a big danger. You want to make sure that if it is a lightning storm, that you are away from trees, that you're away from anything that could get struck, and you want to make sure that you get in and get out as quickly as you can. And remember, lightning can strike twice. Fire, unless you're trained in dealing with fire, you do not want to. Do not try to be a hero, because you could end up getting injured and hurt more. And if you get injured and hurt, well, then that's just more resources that have to be taken up that's not needed. So hazards included there with fire, smoke, toxic gases, and building collapses. And All these are real dangers that can occur on these scenes. Alright, so if you are having to deal with fire, you want to make sure you're trained in the use of the airway protection. Now, you don't have to be a firefighter, but if you are on a scene and there's a lot of smoke and stuff, you may need this PPE to help protect your lungs. So make sure you're trained in how to use the SCBA if you're called to do so. Well, that concludes this section on Chapter 2. We will be moving forward to the next section, which will be protective clothing. And if you have any questions, please make sure you let me know.